Hello, welcome back. You guys, I am so excited to share with you my masking techniques. And they're really not mine. I've collaborated or have learned from a bunch of different artists and have came up with kind of my way of doing things because, you know, you're an artist, you have to find your way. So really what masking is you're protecting the white paper from something. You can use Frisket like we did with the beach scene, or what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a lot of stencils, and we're going to apply gesso and matte medium. This is low gloss, and this is matte, meaning that there's like no gloss. So and just see the difference. And then I'm also going to like share with you how I put glitter onto the matte medium for a completely different look. And so I hope you have lots of questions and try this because it is a super fun time. So to get my setup here right now is I have a stack of watercolor cardstock, watercolor card panels. I always say cardstock. They're card panels. They're cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so it's going to take up the whole card base if you're doing an A2 envelope. And I did actually cut some that were small, just a little bit smaller, so if I wanted to put if I wanted to mat it with some cardstock, I totally could. So let's get started. These are really fast and fun and easy, and I'll make 20 card panels in an afternoon and then have a whole bunch of card panels to make cards with, and I thoroughly have a lot of fun with it. So the other setup is I have, you'll really only need one knife, one palette knife. I do have two. One's dirty, one's a bit more clean, and I bought this about a year ago. I don't think it matters which one. Don't go out and buy a fancy palette knife. I did because I needed the metal part. Like for watercolor, I actually like to make indents in the watercolor paper sometimes with my palette knife. So that's why I got the metal knife. Really, that's the only reason. Otherwise, this works. Or I actually find that if I do gesso, gesso works really good to just kind of scrape it onto the card. So let me kind of show you. We'll start with white gesso, and then I'm going to show you how I like to add maybe some dye with it in just a little bit. But I do like to use, this is just white gesso. This actually is from Boo Bunny white gesso. You don't have to buy it from the craft store. You can buy a big bottle of gesso for like $10 and it will last you forever. If you're not going to use a whole lot of gesso, just buy it in a small container. Either way, it doesn't matter. There's a ton of different ways to use gesso. So I always say get the get the big jar of gesso, like the normal size you get like at the art store, instead of the scrapbooks gesso, only because you get more bang for your buck, but that doesn't really matter. All right, and then I also have this water, soapy water, and that's to clean the stencils off, so I'll move that to the side because I don't really need it, but it's just a Pyrex dish with soapy water. I just put a squirt in of soap, but not, there's I didn't measure it or anything. So I'm just frosting the gesso onto this card panel. The gesso is going to act as a resist to the card, to the paper. And I didn't tape it down. I'm using my fingers to hold the stencil. If you are new to stenciling, you might want to tape it down. I don't think you have to. I really like that. So I'm going to pick it up and see, oh, beautiful. Can you see the texture? You can see the gloss. There's the texture. All right, and then you just let it dry. And sometimes I wipe the edges off because I don't want a rough edge. And there we go. That's going to look really cool. All right, and then I put my stencil into the water so I know that it's going to be all super clean. I also like to have a rag, so when my fingers get gesso on it, I can just clean it up with a washcloth. But, yeah. And then you can go straight to the next one. I do like to just kind of get my gesso all cleared up. All right. So on to the next card. And I'm actually going to get my rag wet a little bit and clean up my gesso mess, because I really don't want gesso on my next card. So I try to keep things clean. Gesso is opaque and water soluble when it's wet. So that means you can do a lot of fun things with it, but it also means that if you keep it on your work surface, it's going to be really, really hard to clean up once it's dried. Gesso is used mostly for oil and acrylics to paint over something. So if you made a mistake, you can gesso over it and then paint over it again. Watercolor, you can't do that because it's transparent, but you can use gesso for texture for watercolor, and it really makes for a fun time. Okay, so that's a simple way to just add texture to your card panel. If you wanted to, I can show you another way. Let me show you another way with a full card panel. And we'll do, okay, for this one, we're going to cover the whole card panel with a 6x6 stencil. It'll fit the whole card panel. And this is the Tailored Expressions Triangle Toss. And I think it'll be really, really fun for a birthday card. I love this background. I can see me using this for a birthday, maybe even for Halloween. I think, I don't know, something totally fun and different. Yeah, I'm not gonna try and get this dirty unless I have to. It's a nice palette knife, but I really enjoy using this for gesso. And so what I will do is I'll start here, and I'll just put a line at the top. Everyone does it differently. There really is no wrong or right way. It's like frosting a cake. So however you like to frost a cake, that's how you do it. I'm actually going to use this one, and I'm going to use the long edge to cover more. And that should get me all the way down, which it does. Look at that. Haha. And just like that, without too much work, I'm going to put this gesso back in here because I can save it for later. And now I have a really fun background triangle. A triangle background, you can kind of see it. Okay, so there's that really cool one. All right, let's move on and do something maybe a little more advanced or something a little more different. Same sort of thought process, but instead of using just white gesso, we're going to add pigment to the gesso. So maybe you want to, let's try this one. And first what I'm going to do is, it does use a little bit more gesso than before, but that's okay. And I will say that once you start, there's a right side and a wrong side to a stencil, which you guys should know about. Usually there's a brand, it'll have like a number or something, it'll say something like printed. And this one says Tailored Expressions, and then sometimes it says TESN03. Okay, so usually there's some kind of writing or something. That means it's the right side up, and that's what you want on to look up. If you have it on the back side with gesso, gesso might get into the bottom. It's made to be flat like this. Now if I was using stencils just to use ink or something with, it doesn't really matter as much, but since I'm using gesso with this, I really want it to lay flat, and that's good. Now if you really wanted to, you could tape this side and this side so it stays, that there's no problem there. Masking tape works just as well as purple tape does. Alright, so that extra gesso that we just used, I'm going to put on my work surface right there. And I'm going to add some gesso. I'm going to add colors to this, and because I really like red roses, why not use red color? And I'm going to add brusho to my gesso, And already you can tell that it's activating. You see that red? All right, and now it's just a matter of mixing it in and seeing how bright of a red you want. And you can also use, you don't have to use brushes. This is just what I had. If you had re-inkers, or if you had maybe some liquid watercolor, you could use that as well. This is a really pale pink color, which I like because it gives just enough, but I want it to be a bit brighter, so I'm just going to add more. And that will just add to the brightness of it. I really like that pink. And I think with this one I might actually put some pearl, I might sprinkle some pearl-less powder. Once I get it frosted onto my card panel, I'm going to put some pearl on top of it just to give it some more of a different finish to the gesso. Okay, I think that's pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and plop this down. Yeah, that red is really going to look pretty. All right, and now I'm going to use my credit card, I can see this becoming a really pretty wedding card. Or maybe not a wedding card, maybe a sweet like spring card to a friend. Sometimes you don't know until after you start assembling it. Yeah. It is literally like frosting a cake. All right, that looks pretty smooth. I don't see a whole lot of extra lines. Now I do not want to put this back into my white gesso, or I'm going to have a pink tint for everything, and I don't really want that. So there is my there is my really cool background with that rose. Isn't that pretty? Oh, that's so fun. That's going to look really pretty. Now what I can do is I can just sprinkle on this pearl. It's wet, so it's going to stick on it. And that's going to look really fun. You could also use some glitter if you wanted. So we're going to let that dry overnight. You guys want to dry this. You're going to want this to dry overnight. All right. Okay. We'll get those all cleaned up. And because we still have some pink gesso, and I don't like to mess with, I don't like to like throw away good art materials, I'm going to go ahead and do another one. And I know I don't have a ton of extra space, but we can use, I have, Tim Holtz has come out with like bigger stencils and smaller stencils, and so I like the smaller stencils come like 4 to a kit, and usually they're curated or designed with something in mind. So I'm going to use a smaller stencil, and maybe I'll get half a card panel out of it, or it doesn't really matter. And I'm going to go with, I'm thinking pink works well with this really fun, trendy stencil. And with Tim Holtz stencils, it's really easy to see the front and the back because it's printed right there. So you don't have to, I don't know, work as hard to find the front or the back of the stencil. Anyways, and I'm going to clean off my space because I really don't want gesso on the bottom of my card if I don't have to. And that's clean enough. I don't know. You guys a clean enough type of person? Because I am. I'm like, yep, good enough. Okay. This is such a fun way to play with brushes too. This is also a fun way to see kind of what colors your brushes can be when you're using opaque mediums. Okay, now it's not going to go all the way through, and that's okay because this is our extra card panel that we got out of this gesso. And I'm okay with that. It really is as simple as that. Okay. So there's some gesso ideas for you, and I think this will look nice. I think I might use this for a like part of a card panel. We'll see. I don't know yet. All right, I'm going to clean up the gesso, and then we can go into matte medium. So you can mix whatever color you want. If you like greens and you're doing a whole bunch of Christmas cards, this stencil, this stencil right here is like pines and cones. I think I can't remember what it's called, but I use this all the time, and you could totally gesso this with green and then just add some brown background, and that would look really cool. So I always use stencils in my card creations because you get a lot of bang for your buck with your stencils, and this is just one of many ways that you could use your stencils. I hope to share with more techniques on stencils, but this is our gesso portion, and I'm really happy with it. I'm going to clean up my workstation, and then we're going to go into matte medium. So I'll see you back here in just a little bit.